the event, the great solar flash, and Ascension. If you're interested in spiritual topics, this has probably come up somewhere along the line for you, this huge wave of light that's going to transform everything. But what actually is it? Is it a real tangible thing, or a gradual process, or completely false? I'm Aaron, and this is Soulbridge Journeys, and today we are diving into the event, the lore of it, how it actually could look in our reality, and my own experience with my own vision of the event in a hypnosis session that I had. So what is the event, and where does it come from? We hear most recently online through a lot of channelers or hypnosis channels and that kind of thing that there's this sudden wave of light that it might be propelled by a coronal mass injection or a big solar flash, and there'll be a huge collective shift instantly and it will change everything. A huge wave of positivity, releasing us from our burdens, negative thought patterns, and shifting us into a higher dimensional reality or a new earth. Going back in history, there's a lot of parallels here with the Rapture. And across different religions or schools of thought, we have things like the end of the Kali Yuga. We have the Mayan prophecy with that great calendar ending in 2012, supposedly, and leading into a new age. And then we have other things like the human design, which suggests this huge transformation in human consciousness in the year 2027. And astrology, where we're looking at this Saturn-Neptune conjunction right at the start of Aries. It begins in 2025, but mainly in 2026, which brings vision into a grounded new reality. And this conjunction hasn't happened at this aspect at 0 degrees Aries, at least in the last sort of 1500 years. So what does this all mean? And how can it manifest? Because on the other hand, we also have a lot of fear-mongering and apocalyptic visions and dreams of what our future as humans might look like. So let's dive in. Discernment here is huge, and although this for me is one of the most exciting topics to talk about. I absolutely love it, and if I'm being completely honest, there's always been an aspect of it that just rings true to me. I feel it, that there is some truth to this, but I don't know exactly how this will carry out, if it will be some huge dramatic shift or some gradual process that kind of forces us all to change. The biggest sort of caveats to this are, be careful with the information that you take as your absolute truth. If it's coming from somewhere else, take it as an interesting point. And the whole spiritual bypassing aspect, it's very dangerous to assume that this amazing thing may happen, so therefore we don't have to do anything, we don't have to step into action, make any changes or work on ourselves, because this lovely thing will come and take that all away from us. The point of us here having a human experience is to have these lessons. So we must take these things as an interesting train of thought and a possibility, but also be okay with the fact that it may never happen and it could just remain that possibility. Taking ownership of our own lives and choices. That said, I originally heard of it wasn't quite framed as the event, but Dolores Cannon, who was the founder of QHHT, she had a book series called The Convoluted Universe, and another book called The 3 Waves of Volunteers, and I believe The Journey to New Earth. Might have got that slightly wrong, but I'll put links in the description. And through hundreds and hundreds of Dolores' sessions, she was getting repeated information from clients that there was going to be this split. The Earth, as we know it, will split into two, and it will be one lower vibrational Earth and one higher vibrational Earth, and more of a kind of a service to self mentality on one and a service to others. Good and bad, yin and yang as you like, but there will be this collective split, and those on this Earth will no longer be aware of those on that Earth. And it was just a fascinating concept to me. As I sort of delved into this topic more and more, I began to see that a lot of more current QHHT and BQH practitioners were also getting this kind of information. But it was more recent, so it was within the realms and the context of what we are experiencing as humans today in this Earth in the current millennium. Among these, I discovered the work of Allison Co. And Allison would quite often get very specific information in terms of what this event might look like, how we will perceive it within our sort of, outside of kind of an analogy, in our actual daily walking lives. How will that experience look for us, and what will it lead to? And then also aspects of the new Earth, or what things might look like beyond this event. And Allison is absolutely fantastic at delving deeper and asking the right questions and kind of building on what we already know and trying to explore other avenues. And of course, with the consent of her clients, they go in with these questions anyway, and sometimes not at all. This information just presents itself through the client or through the client's higher self. So I always admired Allison's integrity in this work and gravitated a lot to it, because you do get a lot of other people that may be a bit more leading or come at this topic with their own personal view of what this might look like, be it a negative or a positive event, whereas Allison kind of just lets the client build on the information that they're getting and always has a focus on what the client needs first and foremost, and anything extra is a gift, really, an additional extra. But the client's own healing and journey is always first and foremost, which just speaks to that integrity. So I think I'll just dive right in. I had a session with Allison myself. When would this have been? 2022, I believe. And Allison actually posted this on her YouTube channel. I believe it's the frequency shift from the Earth's perspective, or from a Pleiadian perspective. And I'll link to this video directly. And in this session, I am referred to as Ben, just to protect my identity at the time. I, at the time, had this session because that interest of the event was there, but I was in a work situation. I used to work as a veterinary nurse, and I knew it wasn't why I was here for. I knew it wasn't going to be forever, and I wanted to know what my mission here was, or what my purpose was. But mostly, my dog Bowser was getting very, very old at this point, and I knew that he wasn't going to be around for much longer, and I was very much struggling with that. And I just wanted a bit of clarity, a bit of information, and to perhaps be able to connect with him on that sort of soul level, just to understand. So I've got some notes as well, because I just want to make sure that I'm hitting all the main sort of key messages that I kind of had from my session, because it was so profound, and to be able to see this visually was amazing, and it was so tangible and so real. So the biggest theme that I kind of got from my session was that I had a duty over my emotions. I think that was in respect to my care for Bowser. You know, I was his protector, and that was what I was here for. But also to try to step out of fear. Fear brings us down in vibration, and that we are kind of walking that path, sort of service to self or service to others, selfish or willing to help, and to stand firm and live your life in that way. If that's what you believe and if that's what you like, or you resonate with it, then show up in the world and treat other people well, help other people. Try not to judge and look at things with empathy or compassion, and walk the talk, really. It's so easy to fall into negativity or into judgment or fear. But just know we are all here. There's a grid around the world, and we're all placed where we need to be to try and keep that vibration up and to help those around us. And if you're not working on yourself and trying to be the best version of you, the overall message was just show up and try to be that positive force for other people, because it's contagious. You know, if other people see it, then their next interaction with somebody else, they may approach that differently, sort of thing. So it was quite a positive message, because at the time I was going into a lot of negativity and woe is me kind of thought, and it just helped me see more of an objective kind of bigger picture. I also was able to connect with Bowser and that soul group, and it was kind of that we had we were from the same soul group, and I could see that. And he had the autonomy of choice when he leaves. That was his soul's purpose, not anybody else's, and just to respect that. But I was also shown, and this is fascinating because my sort of more recent movement into mediumship work, this is just very interesting. It told me in my session, and this was kind of my higher self, that the world's going to change, and our current understanding of death isn't going to be what it always will be. In terms of, now if you speak to most people, 99.9% of people, if somebody dies, that's it, they're gone. There may be a heaven, a hell, a spirit world, a something else, but as we know it, they are no longer with us. And then looking into mediumship and into quantum healing work, you get more of an understanding that in this physical lives, as we are now here, we are just a small aspect of our bigger soul self. So let's just say 90% of our soul is on the other side in the spirit world already, and 10% of that fragment is what we have here now in this body. So what I was shown was that our understanding will change, because our vibration, our collective vibration, this is everybody, will begin to raise. And as it rises, we will perceive new things. And we will then be able to contact those in spirit, or those sort of greater soul aspects. And in doing so, our understanding of death being a ending or a going elsewhere, it won't be relevant anymore, because we will start to perceive that we don't go anywhere. It can be, not always, but can be a conscious choice, and that there's actually something beautiful to that transition, and we will be able to have more of a contact with that. So what we understand and perceive as that sort of very sad and mournful process now might not necessarily always be the case, which was fascinating to me, because I found that a very difficult thing to get my head around in terms of the event, because to me I was like, well, this process, so we ascend and then we have more contact with the spirit world and more abilities, and I just thought, well, that sounds like death to me. Is that not what happens when we die? But the overarching point is that in our physical bodies there is this cyclical cycle that happens, I believe it's once every 29,000 years, where humanity raises in consciousness, and we kind of enter a new dimensional or a new frequency of this reality that we are in. So we're physically still here, but what we perceive and feel might be different. Our understanding of it might change, and what we feel might change. So yeah, absolutely fascinating. And it just makes you realize how limited we are at the moment in our own views, and how we sort of navigate what life is and what's important to us. So during this session, I was taken to this ship, and I was shown a view of the Earth, and that this cleansing would take place. And in my session, and it was just the best way that I could see it in my head at the time, I said it was like milk over cereal. This energy, this sort of white light brightness just enveloped the Earth, and it changed. And it affected everybody at the same time. And it was almost like negativity went away. Judgment or people with ill intentions were no longer there. But it was also quite confusing, and it was almost kind of quite a shocking process, and some integration had to take place. And I believe I remember thinking it would have been a couple of days at least, but the kind of souls or that weren't as weighed down as adults with all of the kind of traumas and things that we go through in life. So children or animals, they're more kind of connected to their higher selves. They haven't got all of these walls and layers around them that we develop as we get older, and they would cope with this shift much more easily. But overall, once it happened, there was quite a jovial and spirited, connected kind of feeling amongst people. I also did see portals, and then I was getting information that there will be this kind of collective choice point. And it kept coming up, choice point. And it was showing me that we are currently going through a time where there's increased pressures and stress and negativity and fear, and the world's in chaos and all of this. But we're also having our own individual issues and things that we need to work through and experience. But what's happening on a collective level is that we're all being forced into making a choice, and every individual has to make this choice for themselves. And it was shown to me as a portal. We have to choose to either stay or step into this new portal or this new place. But in doing so, you are claiming that higher aspect of yourself and stepping into it. And in doing so, you're acknowledging the work and that it might not be easy, because you're trying to shed those things that keep you held down. So we have to do this work. We have to kind of prepare. But I was shown kind of a triangle, and collectively, if this is humanity, we were all being pushed into this corner of this triangle, and there was this building of pressure, and it was almost like inevitable that there would eventually be this breakthrough where we just become so kind of compressed that there just has to be this release, this change. And it kind of reminded me of geology with rock formations and minerals and crystals, where there's this intense pressure and heat that eventually can form crystals or completely change the state of things. So it was quite an interesting thing to see is kind of happening to us on a collective level. But also, it was like this big catalyst that something or a collection of things will happen to be a catalyst for this change. And if this change doesn't happen, then there is that chance that negative changes can happen anyway. And by that, I can mean sort of earth changes. You know, there could be this pole shift. We already know that our magnetosphere is weakening by, I believe it's about 10% every 100 years at the moment, but it's quickening. Changes in the sort of water distribution on this planet. I'm always reminded to Michael Crichton's, there's a quote in one of his books where it's an arrogance of the human to think that we're sort of destroying this planet or the environment, because Earth at any point could just shake us all off like fleas when it had enough of us. And it was kind of like that. It was kind of that we are going to be given an opportunity to step into our truth and our integrity, or we can go down with the ship, and the choice is ours. And in terms of kind of catalysts, I'm very aware that this isn't for everyone. Some people will think this is absolutely bonkers, batshit, crazy. But when I look around the world at the moment and I see how people treat each other and some of the systems that we have in place and just what's going on, we're so divided. To me, that's bonkers and that's crazy. It makes sense to me that there will be a rebalancing or a restructure, because at what point do we all sort of say enough's enough, you know? And if you look back, I'm not sure what words I can say on here, but the pandemic, for me, that was a catalyst, because we were all just getting on with our daily lives, and then all of a sudden this thing happened and it changed everything for everyone. And on the flip side of it, we now look back and we're starting to see systems in place that no longer work for us. People that we trusted to have our best interests at heart didn't. And our lives, you know, you've got people that didn't want to return to the office 5 days a week anymore. They're like, well, I can do this at home. Why do I have to do that every day? It's just, it made us reevaluate kind of what was happening. And on the other hand, you kind of had that where it was such a good example where, so this big pandemic happens and it sets everybody into fear. And all of a sudden, it was so much easier to see the absolute best and the absolute worst in us, because this increased pressure kind of made our true selves more apparent and more visible. So you had people that would lead with compassion. All of a sudden, a huge part of the population is told, actually, your job is not essential, so stay home, please. And then you're thinking, well, for years and years I've been doing this, and like, what the hell? It was all meaningless. But you would get people that would help. They would help deliver people's medicines and foods that weren't able, with the elderly being more vulnerable. And volunteering and just being their best self in a difficult situation. Whereas on the other hand, you had people being more selfish or imposing their rules in their own way that they perceive them, and becoming their own sort of mini Hitlers about them. An attempt to control others. And this situation kind of gave them the agency to be like, oh, okay, then I can make my own rules and force others to follow me under the guise of this new guidance that everybody was getting. And I remember I didn't feel fearful of the actual disease or virus itself. What scared me was how people would act and how people would respond. So my birthday is the 22nd of March. So the pandemic here in the UK was announced the day following, which was a Monday. So I had a couple of days off work because of my birthday. And we heard rumours and things were being said in the days kind of leading up to it. But on that Monday, my partner called me and said, like, Aaron, they're sending people home. I might be sent home today. I'm not really sure what's happening, but this is serious, and I think there's going to be an announcement on the news about it. And it was kind of like, holy shit. And I said, okay, I will, because I was off work, I'll go to the shop and get a few bits for our folks, just in case everything happens and things get a bit weird. And I remember going to the shop, and it was just a local supermarket here, and walking in, and it looked like a scene from an apocalyptic film where, when everyone's kind of looting the shops and kind of running around and frantic. It was like that in the car park when I arrived. And you were like, oh shit, okay, so this is serious. And then going into the store and just seeing, and bearing in mind that this was only announced within the last sort of hour, complete shelves and sections were completely empty. And I remember seeing a man, and he had a trolley full of toilet paper. There must have been about 20 packets of toilet paper. And this lady was saying to him, please, I just need one. You're only meant to have 3. And he was saying, you're only meant to have 3 of each fucking brand. And it was so ugly. But he was into fear, and he was, I'm going to take everything from me. And that's what scared me, because within a couple of hours, these inner natures were rising to the surface, and people were sort of showing themselves for who they were. And this external event that happened gave them the ability to do so. So yeah, I was more scared of the response that people would have. So a bit of a tangent here, but you can look back at that time. That was a catalyst of change, because it very quickly sorted people into who's selfish, who's compassionate, and it forces us under pressure to reveal who we actually are. No pretending, no fakeness. You're scared, and there's extra stress, and you're in survival mode, and your true nature starts to appear. So interesting. So back on track, so to the session. So these were kind of these portals and these choice points. And I was told that this would be happening very soon. And we pushed for more, but there was not a time frame. And I think another important thing to mention here is when you are in a BQH or a QHHT session, you are so high vibrational. You feel so positive and connected and at ease that the information that you are bringing is from this sort of higher vibrational state. So I do have to wonder if time frames or information is, if you remain up here at this high vibrational state, then this will happen tomorrow. But then boom, an hour later, you're back in your physical body, and that's not where you operate for a daily basis. So I think that's where we get some discrepancies in timings for these things. But also to remember that we are getting this information very similar to a mediumship, and it's in our mind's eye, and we're getting knowings and feelings and everything else, but this has to pass through our internal filters. So me, Aaron, here is interpreting this information, so we can get it wrong, we can have our personal opinions, jump in or block. So yeah, I don't know, we've just got to maybe look at the bigger picture of this information and not at the specifics of it, which is great to see so many people sharing information, because we can kind of bring it together and see different pieces of the puzzle, and get a bit more of an objective view, really, you know. So there was information as well that we will be in contact with benevolent beings, whether they are UAPs or aliens. But what I get more, and whenever I hear about aliens and spaceships from different planets and that kind of thing, I believe that they exist, but I don't think that's what they are. I think they are interdimensional beings. They are here, they are already here, but they are living in a different sort of frequency or dimension than what we're perceiving. And as such, they have the technology to sometimes cross over. Like perhaps they are more sort of advanced than we are. So I think we're looking at them wrong. And perhaps that's where some stories of kind of fairies or jinn or these kind of sort of mystical creatures in folklore, perhaps that's where they originate from. They've always been here, that they're on a different level than we are, in much in the same way as past loved ones that we have that have moved on to spirit. They're just experiencing from a different perspective, and we don't really have that clear access to it yet. So yeah, interesting. So going on, I did have another session as well. So it was just showing me as well that things on the planet will increase in intensity. Things might get harder or more stressful. There will be more turmoil, and if you look at the news, it's all just this constant horror going on in the outside world. And as it builds, this will lead to this tipping point where we will stay or go, make a choice, and then there will be this time of change. And in the session, it seemed quite instant, quite quick. However, that might not necessarily be the case. And I was shown as well a different aspect of this, that this change and this opportunity to rise in consciousness honors our free will, because although we have a lot of negativity here, selfish people, agenda-driven people, narcissists, not everybody is like that. So it's almost giving an opportunity for those that they're here, they're sharing the same space as these people, but if they wish to not go down or remain with them, there is that opportunity to rise up and learn new lessons or experience new things, rather than those who are still stuck in those loops of repeating those same patterns of behavior and will perhaps take more time to resolve those. So yeah, it was very much a understanding that this separation needs to take place, because those that need to go higher and evolve can't remain here being stuck amongst these other people. They need to have the opportunity to go and keep building and keep moving up. And those that stay, it's not a punishment. It's just that until they resolve those burdens and work through those same issues that then they're not quite getting, they'll have to keep doing that until they then will get the opportunity to move. And I was shown that that will also happen. You know, they're not going to be sort of stuck forever. They're just not quite ready yet. So again, it was kind of, as we move up, the earth seemed the same yet cleaner. Some things looked the same, some things looked different, but it was more organic, more natural, and we had a connection. So you would kind of feel the implications of what a conscious choice of yours might be. So perhaps you're going to tell somebody something. You will feel how that will feel to them to receive that information. So you will have more of a conscious awareness of what choices you make, and that would extend to how we treat others, how we treat the environment around us, and how we treat ourselves. So it was a much richer experience of how we navigate through our lives, but also much more empowering as well. And from that, abilities can develop where we can communicate more sort of telepathically, for instance, or empathy is more valued. All of these things in society at the moment that are kind of dismissed as weak, or in some cases false, that they don't exist and it's all hogwash. No, actually, like these, and we'll call them abilities because they do need to be worked on. These are what are going to be more valued moving forward. These old ways of selfishness and money and greed and power, they're not relevant anymore. We're moving more into a world of unity and community, building together and supporting. And in doing so, there's just that feeling of, I don't want my actions to have a negative impact on my neighbor or somebody that I will get angry at driving, because I feel how that will be received. So I would choose to have a different approach because I wouldn't like that myself. And from there, we keep learning, and it's not all kind of instant peace, love, all knowing, that's it. It's a completely new framework to what we already exist in. So there are new lessons and new avenues of growth and teething problems. It won't necessarily be easy at first, but our perceptions will be different. And it's just fascinating that this could happen. And again, it was soon. This will happen soon. But mostly the overarching takeaways of these sessions were that we need to be authentic. And most of us that are interested in this work will have roles of being sort of a stabilizing force for other people during this process. Other people will look at those that might have some awareness of what's going on and feel calm, knowing that, oh, well, they're not scared and they seem to be okay, so maybe I don't need to be scared either. And just kind of holding that torch, I suppose, as these changes unfold, and not adding to that fear narrative. Because another thing that I was shown with it, those in charge, the institutions that we're used to, they will be kicking and screaming right till the very end, adding to the fear, adding to the stress and the turmoil. So we have to choose to look away, and that's on us. We can buy what we're given and take it all in and carry that, but we can also choose to look away from it and to make our own decisions, and that sort of stepping into our own power and trusting our own instincts. And this is your gut feelings. Your instincts and your gut feelings are a guiding force, and we can't deviate from those. But we're so used to being told what we need to believe and what rules to follow. So we need to make a conscious choice to look away and create our own narrative and lead as an example. I don't know all the answers, but if I go out every day and treat people nicely and kindly, that's all I can do. I'm not going to make it. I'm not in a position to make any huge changes that will be seen on the television or be huge sums of money. But what I can do right now is to treat other people kindly and with respect. And if we all kind of lead with that, we'll have that sort of ripple effect on each other. So yeah, so it's more of this split will happen, and it's just whether or not we get that quick, sudden change, or if it is more gradual. But I do believe in my heart that this is true. It might not be this dramatic, big sort of flash of light, because we're given images to help us understand things. It might not necessarily be exactly that, but the overall message that I'm getting in terms of stepping into truth and being authentic and leading with integrity and compassion, I needed to see those images to gather those messages from them. So yeah, anybody, I implore you to check out Allison Co's channel, because I am just one of many videos of many different perspectives on this topic, and they are all absolutely fantastic. And if you're having a bad day or you're feeling negative, they are my go-to. Just put one on, put anyone on, and you will feel it and you will rise up. They're a massive help. So big thank you to Allison for that, and I will make sure I put a link in the description here. Other aspects as well that kind of support this, or if we see how the world's changing, those power structures in place, we don't trust them anymore. Corruption is coming out. Every day something else happens or we learn something new, but yet they're trying to keep that grip, aren't they? Constantly, changing the narrative or turning against each other. And then all the while we've got that kind of technological advancement that's happening. And even if you look at AI, we're anticipating the sort of singularity of AI. And I might butcher this, but I think it's called the AG1 moment, where AI becomes sort of more intelligent and autonomous than humans. And the current timeline for that, I believe, is within the next 10 years. So even if you think this whole kind of change, this flash of light, this spiritual awakening, or this shift in frequency is absolute hogwash, these external things are still happening regardless. We are on that timeline and we will experience them. So why wouldn't there be an alternate sort of time frame or timeline or version? Because we're all making different choices every day. Different choices that you make can alter your life hugely. So if there is that split in sort of frequency, sort of more dense, more selfish, and then more empathy and more sensitive, you can kind of feel how those two things will, over time, grow further and further apart. and perceive their realities as completely different. So just something to think about. And again, I just keep going back to, when I have doubts, you look at the objective side of it. So you look at the astrology, you look at this sort of Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries of 2026. Now, I myself, born 22nd of March, I'm right at the very start of Aries. And in March of this year, May of this year, this conjunction came in for a few months over the summer and affected those born right at the very, I think it was just the 20th to the 22nd of March, or the 21st to the 22nd of March of Aries. So I was implicated in that. And during that time, I was in a job that I wasn't enjoying, and I knew that it wasn't my purpose, but I was still just carrying on. Not necessarily happy. Now, during this time, it was everything in my life came crumbling down within such a short amount of time, and effectively forced me to change and to face who I am. What do I want to be doing? How do I be more authentic? Because whether I went kicking and screaming or whether I made a conscious choice, those systems that I were in that weren't aligned to me had to go. They had to go. And it wasn't easy. I'm not going to lie. It was a very difficult time, and still is in some respects. But change couldn't happen unless those things that weren't serving me went away. So I feel like I've had a brief glimpse into this conjunction, which actually comes back in the spring of next year, in 2026, and will affect us all globally, and not just those, I think, at the very beginning of Aries, and I think maybe the very end of Libra. We had a small glimpse of that this year, but certainly next year it's going to be on this huge collective level. And just remember, the whole Saturn-Neptune conjunction is vision. You've got Neptune's vision grounded by Saturn. So we're changing that vision into a reality that we can perceive. So just very, very interesting. And there's two astrologers, Pam Gregory and Steve Judd, and they have done some incredible videos about this. Steve's very practical and grounded in his approach to it, but with Pam, very much interested in this shift in consciousness. So you'll see a lot of parallels to this kind of shift in the sort of language that Pam uses. So I'll link to those two because, again, absolutely fascinating. And I can't thank them both enough, because when I'm unsure or uncertain or in doubt, again, they can give me an objective look into, well, this is the time that we're in now, and this is kind of what we're experiencing, and this is what might be coming up. And it's not to kind of predict, but it's to show a framework of how we might perceive things in our reality. So very much recommend those two, very much recommend. Yeah, so just kind of closing, we also have the old things like the Hopi prophecy and the Mayan calendar, and I think we are just ending solar cycle 25, so we have been in a time of peak sort of solar activity. Our magnetosphere is weakening, our poles are actually changing at the moment, so whether or not a full pole shift happens or a reversal happens, I don't know, but just objectively, things are at play during this time that just make you wonder. So yeah, so I think I'll leave it there. But biggest takeaways are whether there will be some sudden magical flash of light that will change everything, or whether it's more of an extended window of time, perhaps this conjunction of next year, where we are all given the choice to, do you want to finally step into your truth? Do you want to keep working there, or keep doing that thing that you know isn't serving you, but you're doing it for whatever reason anyway? Perhaps fear, perhaps the security that it gives. It's basically going to be like a final wake-up call of, well, now's the time. Step into your truth, because this is the time to do it. And if not, that's also fine. You can stay as you are and keep going. But if you have that niggling feeling that it's not quite right and it's not working for you, and one day I will change, or wouldn't it be lovely if I did that thing, but what if, or maybe I'm not good enough to do that. No, this is the time. Step into your true self. Have that belief and lead with love in the way that you treat others and navigate your life. Right. Well, thank you very much, and I will catch you in the next one.